أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Picking up with the Prophet ﷺ's legendary military empire, the era of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affaan radiallahu anhu, chapter 21, the eruption of the conflict. After the bitter liar succeeded in getting Al-Walid ibn Uqba dismissed from the governorship of Kufa, Uthman replaced him with Sa'id ibn al-As. Once Sa'id had arrived in his new region, he ascended the pulpit, praised Allah, and said, "By Allah, I did not want to be sent to you. But when I was commanded, I had no choice but to obey. Conflict has raised its head. I swear by Allah that I will strike its face until it becomes tamed or overpowers me, and I will not compromise myself today." Then he acquainted himself with the situation of Kufa and the various inclinations of its people. Consequently, he learned about the in-depth nature of their problems. He also discovered that a group of Kharijites, bitter individuals, and other enemies of al-Islam were planning to create trouble within the Muslim state. These people were mostly composed of Bedouins and the lower rungs of the society. He wrote to Sayyidina Uthman ibn al-Affan, informed him of this unstable situation, saying, "The situation of Kufa has become unstable. The people have lost their regard for the nobles and pioneers of al-Islam. These lands are mostly inhabited by the dregs of society who follow others as well as the slandering Bedouins. One can hardly see any notables." In his reply, Uthman instructed him to rearrange the hierarchy so that precedence would be given to people according to their seniority in al-Islam and their efforts in al-Jihad, and thus the people of knowledge sincerity and jihad would come before others. Among the things he said to him, "Give precedence to the pioneers who came before you, by whose hands Allah Jalla Jalaluhu opened these lands. Let those who stay in these lands do to their efforts follow them unless the truth becomes too heavy for them and they want to stop following it. These people, however, certainly follow it. Recognize everyone's due status and give them according to how strictly they follow the truth, for one can achieve justice only by knowing the people." Sa'id did as he was told and informed Uthman thereafter. Uthman assembled his advisors and filled them in how turmoil had gotten hold of Kufa and the way Sa'id ibn al-As had attempted to fix this situation. They responded, "You did the right thing. Do not aid the troublemakers in any way. Do not let them lead and thus feed them for something they are not qualified to do. When an unqualified person takes the lead, he will only ruin things." Uthman said to the Muslims, "O people of Medina, people are stirring up conflict. Get ready to face it and hold fast to the truth. I shall keep you informed of the latest news as it arrives." 21.1 The distress caused by reformation. The Bedouins and others were very hurt when the pioneers and men of jihad struggled. Knowledge and God consciousness were again given superiority in gathering and chosen as leaders and advisors. They began to blame the governors for preferring these people over them and seeking their counsel instead of their own. They also considered to be an attempt to distance them from such positions. Seeing what was happening, the bitter and the defeated took advantage of these Bedouins and instilled in their hearts hatred for the Caliph as well as the state. They incited them to denounce the work of Sa'id ibn al-As and spread rumors against him. Most Kufans, however, did not approve of these bitter rebels, who consequently fell silent and began hiding their doubts about the rulers. They only spread them in secret to the Bedouins, riffraff, and others who had been punished for their crimes earlier and had become deluded. The Jews, Christians, Magians, and others, defeated and bitter enemies of al-Islam, were also plotting against the Muslimin and spreading false rumors about the Caliph and his governors. They recorded every little mistake made by them, adding a great many fabrications and lies along the way. They then used these mistakes to incite the people against them. In their bitter rage, they aimed to spread disorder among the Muslimin and deepen their division. After all, Al-Islam had demolished their false religions. Hence, they felt compelled to destroy the Islamic system that had caused the downfall of their nations and finish off their armies. They began to recruit the rabble, thugs, and simpleton to people or to further their mission. So they began to recruit the rabble, thugs, and simpletons to further their mission. They were joined by those who held a grudge against the Caliph and his governors because they had been disciplined by them. They established a secret society of which all these people were members. They also began to recruit members from other major regions. A secret communication network was organized among all the members. The most important branches were in Kufa, Basra, and Egypt, but they also had significant activity in Al-Madinah itself as well as Syria. Abdullah ibn Sabah, the head of the organization, whom we have already discussed the role in recruiting followers, fabricated letters, and organizing a campaign to remove Uthman from office. The Saba'ites spread corruption in the land and ruined the unity of brotherhood of the Muslimin. They incited people against the rulers and even spread lies about the Caliph himself. Their ultimate aim was to destroy Uthman and the Islamic State. Ibn Sabah headed towards Syria to corrupt some of its people, but he did not succeed because Muawiyah was more than ready to confront him. He then entered Basra to prepare the rebels, angry men, and simpletons who followed him. The governor at the time was Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Khurayz, who was a firm, just, and righteous man. After arriving in Basra, Ibn Sabah stayed with Hakim ibn Jabala, who was a despicable and vicious thief. When the Muslim army returned to Basra, Hakim ibn Jabala stayed behind to cause mischief in the Persian lands. The non-Muslims as well as the Muslims complained about him to Uthman, who responded by writing to Abdullah ibn Amr, "Restrain Hakim," he said, "Ibn Jabala in Basra, and do not allow him to leave until you feel that he has improved." Hence, Ibn Amr placed him under house arrest and prevented him from leaving Basra. Whilst this thief was under house arrest, the Jew Abdullah ibn Sabah came to him. He exploited the ill nature, corruption, and bitterness of Ibn Jabala and convinced him to join forces with him. Thus, Ibn Jabala became his main associate in Basra. Abdullah ibn Amr soon heard that a stranger had come and stayed with Hakim ibn Jabala. When Ibn Amr heard about Ibn Sabah, he called him and asked, "Who are you?" He replied, "I am a man from the people of the book who became interested in Al-Islam and embraced it. Now I wish to stay next to you and settle in your presence." Ibn Amr responded, "What are these things that I keep hearing about you? Leave." He expelled him from Basra. However, he left behind him men who followed him and established therein a branch of his Jewish Saba'ite party. After some time, Ibn Sabah headed for Kufa, where he discovered some deviants who were ready to accept his ideas. Thus, he brainwashed them and recruited them. When Sa'id ibn al-As heard about this, he expelled him from Kufa. Ibn Sabah headed towards Egypt and settled there, planting the seeds of corruption and watering them until they were ready to be harvested. He attracted the scum, simpletons, bitter individuals, and sinners to join him. He maintained secret communications or connections between himself in Egypt and his followers in Al-Madinah, Basra, and Kufra. His men kept moving among these regions. The efforts of Ibn Sabah and his followers lasted for approximately 6 entire years. They began their satanic operation in the 30th years after the Hijriya and achieved their goal by the end of the 35th years after the Hijriya, when the Caliph was killed. However, the Saba'ites continued spreading corruption throughout the Khalifa of Ali, or the Khalifat of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, and decided to stir up turmoil in Kufa. The troublemakers disturbed the gathering of Sa'id ibn al-As in the 33rd year of the Hijriya. This is 21.3. One day, Said ibn al-As was sitting in one of his public gatherings, surrounded by regular citizens. As they were discussing certain issues, the Sabai rebels found their way into the gathering. Said ibn al-As and one of the attendants, Qunais ibn Hubays al-Asadi, disagreed on something, while 7 men of the troublemakers Kharajit were listening. Among them was Jundub al-Azdi, whose son was a thief and had been killed for taking part in someone's murder. Also present were Al-Ashtar al-Nakhai ibn al-Khawa and Sasa ibn Suhan. These troublemakers took advantage of the situation and began beating Khunais al-Asadi. When his father got up to help him, they beat him as well. Sa'id tried to stop them but was unable to, and the father and son were beaten until they fell unconscious. Banu Asad wanted to take revenge for their people, and a war almost broke out between the two parties. However, Sa'id managed to bring the situation under control. When Uthman heard about what had happened, he commanded Sa'id to deal with the situation wisely and suppress the conflict to the best of his ability. After this, the troublemaking rebels returned to their houses and began spreading rumors and lies about Sa'id. Uthman and the nobles of Kufa. The Kufans could not tolerate this. They called on Sa'id to punish them. However, he said, Uthman has forbidden me from doing so, but if this is what you want, tell him. Thus the noble and righteous of Kufa wrote to Uthman, informing him about this group of troublemakers and requesting that he banished them from Kufa because they had only brought harm with them. Uthman ordered Sa'id to expel this group of fewer than 20 men. He instructed that they should be sent to Muawiyah in Syria. In his letter to Muawiyah regarding these men, he wrote, the Kufans have sent to you a group of men who were made to be troublemakers. Keep an eye on them, frighten and discipline them, and stay with them. Then if you feel that they have once or they have come to their senses, welcome their improved attitudes. Among those who were expelled to Syria were Al-Ashtar al-Nakhai Jundub al-Azdi, Sasa ibn Suhan, Kumail ibn Ziyad, Umair ibn Dabi, and Ibn al-Khawwa. Uthman knew that Muawiyah was the right person to deal with this problem because he was sufficiently eloquent, forbearing, and smart. This is why he used to ask Muawiyah to resolve such problems for him as soon as they occurred. When these men arrived in Syria, Muawiyah welcomed them and accommodated them in a church called Maryam. He did as Uthman had ordered and treated them as they had been treated in Al-Iraq. He ate lunch and dinner with them every day. One day he said to them, you are truly amongst the Arabs. You have achieved nobility through al-Islam and subdued other regions. Now their status and inheritance is yours. However, I have heard that you have criticized the Quraysh. Remember, were it not for the Quraysh, you would still be lowly like before. Muawiyah began with an honorable reception. He hosted them and sat in their company to find out what was in their hearts before judging them to be what the Kufans had said. When they felt comfortable enough with him, they opened up, and he realized that they were motivated by tribalism and desire for power. Thus he knew that he had to try convincing them from 2 angles: the effect of al-Islam in honoring the Arabs, and the role of the Quraysh in spreading al-Islam and enduring the pains involved. He reckoned that if al-Islam had any impact on them, they would heed this advice. Thus he presented to them the general picture of the situation of the Arabs, who had become a united nation under a single leader. They had also abandoned a life of chaos, bloodshed, and repugnant tribalism. Continuing his advice, he emphasized, your leaders have been a shield for you to this very day. Do not abandon your shields. Your leaders today are being patient with the way you mistreat them. They endure the trouble you cause. I swear by Allah, you have to stop before he tries you with someone who punishes you. When that happens, you will not be praised for your patience. In fact, you will have taken part in releasing a calamity that will affect the people during and after your lifetime. One of the men said, the Quraysh were not the greatest Arabs in the terms of numbers, nor were they the most powerful. You cannot threaten us with them. Likewise, if the shield that you mentioned is broken, we become vulnerable. Muawiyah said, I understand you now. You hold on to your notions because you have little reasons. You are the spokesman of your people, but seemingly have no sense. I tell you about the importance of al-Islam and remind you of it, and you remind me of the days before it. I admonish you, and you begin claiming that the shields that protect you will break, even though what might break it has nothing to do with the shield. May Allah humiliate those who venerate your cause and complain about your Khalif. He understood that delving briefly into topic would not do any good, and that a detailed explanation of the Quraysh situation was required. Thus he continued, try to understand. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, the mighty, the majestic, was the only one who dignified the Quraysh. Yes, they were not the greatest among the Arabs in terms of numbers, nor were they the most powerful. However, they had the noblest descent, purest lineage, highest status, and finest conduct. Before al-Islam, when people were eating each other alive, Allah alone preserved them. Indeed, those honored and raised by him can never be humiliated or put down. Do you know of any people, Arabs or foreigners, black-skinned or red-skinned, whose land and possessions have not been afflicted by calamity except the Quraysh? Indeed, everyone who plotted against them was humiliated by Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Then when he wanted to save those who venerated and followed his religions from the vanity of this world and an evil end in the hereafter, he chose the best of his creation to do that. He was pleased with his followers, the best of whom were from the Quraysh. He built this dominion from them and gave them this Khalif, for only they were fit to be appointed as its caretakers. Thus Allah Jalla Jalaluhu protected them while they safeguarded his religion. He secured them from the kings who were subjugating you before al-Islam. You and your companions sicken me. I wish someone else would have talked, but you decided to speak first. Sa. Note that your village is the worst Arab village. You have the worst vegetation and the deepest valleys. Your people are thoroughly experienced in mischief. You make the worst neighbors, and no one noble or lowly has ever stayed with you without being slandered and bad-mouthed. You have the most shameful nicknames and make the worst sons-in-law. You were strangers among the nations, living by the borders and exploited by the Persians, until the call of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reached you. At that time, you were a stranger in Oman and did not live in Bahrain to answer the call with its people. This makes you the worst of your people. Then when Islam disguised you, mixed you with others, and made you overcome the nations that used to rule you, you began to attempt to distort the religion of Allah, resorting to vile and lowly methods. That will not put the Quraysh down or harm them. It will certainly not stop them from doing their duty. Shaitan is not mindless of you. Excuse me. He knew that you were the vilest of your people, so he used you to ruin the people, and he will destroy you. He is well aware that he cannot change Allah's decree through you or stop something that he wants to happen. Whatever evil you manage to do, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will send you something more humiliating in return. Then he got up and left them. Then he got up and left them, disquieted and grumbling. Muawiyah had now done all he could to convince them on ideological, cultural, and political levels. His speech can be summarized as follows. He presented the status of the Quraysh before and after al-Islam. He discussed the situation of their tribes before al-Islam and reminded them that in terms of nature, they suffered from a bad climate and vegetation. On the political side, they had been living in humiliation under the Persians until al-Islam honored them and raised their status. He dealt with Sa'sa ibn Suhan, their spokesman, reminding him that he had not answered the call of Islam when his people had done so. He also exposed the plans of Sa'sa and his companions to seek conflict and to corrupt Allah's religion. He clarified to them that Shaitan was stirring up this turmoil and propagating this evil. This is why he connected the history of this nation with Allah first, then with Al-Islam and its creed. After that, he revealed the forgery of these men and exposed every one of them, letting them know that their plans were only a result of their pre-Islamic ideologies. Inshallah, we will stop here and pick it up from page number 400 and the bottom of 414. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.